yellow 3. Climate maintaining 4,000. When approach to pad 6. Caution.
HIBY might have just released a market disruptor into the digital audio player market. With just the price tag of $249 US, this R4 here is surprisingly super packed with so many things. And I will show you what are the things that is impressive about this R4. For $249 US, this box here, and inside the box you're gonna find R4 itself here, and two most important thing, which is also this carrying case, silicone carrying case, and a screen protector, which seems to be matte to me. And have a look here. All purchase of R4 now comes with this lanyard, which depends on what color you opted for. In this case, I got black. See here? Very nice, right? Let's just quickly have a look at the build quality itself. At the side here, you can see 4 buttons, which is the on and off and also the function button. And of course, this typical playback, play, forward, reverse. And on the side here, the volume button, which is up and down. And this is micro SD slot. And I think another plus which is I find it very useful will be the lock function here, which will allow me to lock it if I were to put it into my pocket and prevent any kind of accidental press. And at the bottom here, 4.4mm balance and 3.5mm single-ended, and the USB charging port. This is, by the way, still running on USB PD 2.0 at 20 watt. So the charging itself will take at least 2 hours to complete. 4,500 mAh of battery and Class A amplifier on top of it. And also not forgetting quad DAP inside this R4 here. So you might be wondering, how does the battery handles all that power? How long will it last? For example, I have tested it with Tidal, streaming via Wi-Fi, and attach it to this IEM here, which is HIBY Project Ace, running at 32 ohm from this 4.4mm balance. I was able to get around, at max, 6 hours of playtime on this R4, streaming Tidal. And doing local audio playback, yield a bit better, which is much closer to 8 hours, but still under 8 hours. So I would say that the 4,500 mAh battery was really drained to a point that, you know, when you push for high gain on this R4, it will actually drain the power quite a lot. Thermometer. Let's just do this. Okay, you see here? How's that? 42. Yep. That's how hot it is. But then again, let's just get a bit of perspective. How does the other competition fare in the market? FIO M23 here, pretty much yielded the same, above 40C, right? Doing the same thing, okay? And the coolest of them all is actually another competition here, which is DX180, which runs at around 34 to 35, 36 max, very impressive. Sine N3 Ultra yielded at around just under 40, which is very impressive considering that this is a tube amplifier DAP. However, let me just remind you again, Class A amplifier is expected to run hot because it does not have any kind of restriction to the power delivery itself. And that is why you get performance as well on top of that. Snapdragon 665, Android 12, 3 GB of RAM, and 32 GB of internal storage. So it means that if you plan to do on local audio playback on this R4, you just have to use micro SD. Otherwise, there's not much of space left to install your music inside here. But then again, most likely you would end up spending more time using this R4 as a streaming service using Tidal or Roon, because that's exactly what I did. It has that Bluetooth and also Wi-Fi support. Let me just show you some of the important features pertaining to audio, which I think important to exhibit here, okay?
and it is in audio setting here. Let's just talk about the most important one first, which is filter. And as you can see here, we have 3 types of filter, which is fast roll off, slow roll off, and also minimum phase. I have been trying with all of these 3 filters with different type of IEM or even headphone, and I will just simply admit that perhaps due to the limitation of my hearing, I am not hearing that much different at all, if any. So I would just simply say that I have heard more effective filter coming from other digital audio player, okay, some of the competition in the market. But then R4 seems to be not so effective with that particular filter. But then let's just not stop there. The gain, you're gonna get 3 level, which is low, middle, and high. And the most important one, which I think the key element of attraction for this R4 being this MSEB. So what is this MSEB? Now this is very interesting. It does not behave like an EQ, but rather it behaves to alter, to influence the temperament of the sound itself. So what I'm talking about, let me just try to demonstrate. I click on here, enable it, and click OK. And you see here, this is HIBY Project Ace, which is an IEM that I am reviewing right now. And I'll just simply say at this point of time, this Project Ace tend to sound kind of a bit on the brighter side, a bit metallic, very analytical. So if I want it to be a bit more musical and not so sharp sounding, this is what I can do. First of all, after enabling it, you notice there the note thickness. Okay, I can adjust the note thickness to a bit thicker, okay, like that, to 25 for example, so that it will offer a bit more of density to the body itself, and it really works. Then after that, look at the sibilance there, sibilant LF and sibilant HF. Okay, sibilant LF means low frequency, HF means high frequency. So what I did was that I just adjust the high frequency to soft, minus 30 perhaps, okay, because as noted earlier, this thing is kind of a bit bright sounding, a bit more energetic with the upper frequency. And by just doing that, impressively, this sounds a lot more musical now. So I would say that definitely this MSEB is super impressive. And then of course, for people who like to tweak the sound frequency itself, you are given this impressive PEQ, parametric equalizer. And I will not spend too much time on this because obviously I am not an EQ person. But the whole idea behind it is that this type of EQ, which is part of HIBY, is very effective. I have tried before, and definitely this is something which is a super plus, considering that this is, again, you have to remember, price at just $249 US. Okay, and then of course, for the rest of the option here, it has MQA that you can toggle on and off, even though MQA is already being decommissioned from Tidal. And of course, you can adjust some of the other setting here. You see here, when I click this volume adjustment, you can also adjust the volume using your finger like this. You see that? Okay. And just be mindful that you don't press something like this, because it's just so easy to swipe it up to 100%. And I have accidentally swiped this by mistake, okay, to 100 while using this IEM. It almost blew my ear. Perhaps it was my own stupidity, but my point being is that the on-screen volume slider is very sensitive. So we have 4 digital audio processor inside here in quad configuration. ESS Sabre ES9018 C2M quad configuration, okay? And then class A amplifier, very powerful, at least at 4.1 VRMS from the 4.4 mm balance, and the minimum 2.3 VRMS from the 3.5 mm single-ended. The power rating itself, impressive, 525 milliwatt of power. So now let's just find out, is it powerful to drive something like this, Sennheiser HD600 here, or even this Hi-Fi Man Sundara? No problem at all, okay? The kind of output which I'm getting from this Sennheiser HD600, I only needed no more than 60 out of 100 volume, and the output itself full of authority, the kind of sound which I would expect coming from desktop DAC amp even, very impressive. The same can be said for this Hi-Fi Man Sundara here. And then, how does it work? with something which is less powerful, highly sensitive IEM, like this FIO FA19 here. No problem at all. 10 balanced amateur inside. No, I'm not hearing any kind of floor noises even running on high gain. So there you have it. Something which is priced at just $249 US, having the kind of power and having the kind of finesse to handle even the most sensitive IEM or even hybrid. And how about the sound signature itself? I would say that this R4, thankfully, without EQ, without MSEB, or without any kind of adjustment to the PEQ, sounded linear neutral. So what does it mean by linear neutral? When I attach it to this Atmosic ER2XR, which is my favorite, my reference, I am hearing the kind of sound which I would regard as free of coloration. There's no hint of boosting or reduction in the mid-range, in the upper range, or even in the lower frequency. Transparent, neutral, uncolored. This is what you're going to get from R4. As I shown you earlier as well, you can easily tune it in accordance to whatever flavoring that you want by just simply playing with the MSEB and also with the EQ. Those are the kind of feature, again, which you can expect from digital audio player offering twice the price of this R4. And when you do that, the good thing is that the sound itself doesn't sound off, you know. I am not hearing any kind of something which I would consider as out of the ordinary. Even if, let's say, I boosted the bass all the way up to the maximum frequency, no issue at all. It becomes bassy, and the limit of the attached partner will determine whether it will distort or not distort, but not this device itself. A synergy factor. How does it work with different type of partner? How do I know this thing is an impressive digital audio player when it comes to music? I already shown you. I attach it to Atmosic ER2XR here. I'm getting the kind of sound which I consider as transparent, uncolored. The kind of output which I would expect from the recording itself. And when I attach to this HIDIS MP145, this R4 on high gain was able to kind of like, you know, really synergize really well with this MP145 to a point that I am hearing the kind of sound which is wide, open, highly analytical and musical at the same time. We are talking about proper balance here, and pretty much the same can be said when I listen to this FA19 here. Now, you see, in order to ascertain how good the source is, you need to use something like this FA19, because this thing is probably the most detailed, the most analytical, and also the most responsive IEM in the market now when it comes to sound frequency. What you are hearing from this FA19 is the kind of sound coming from the output itself. And this is where, first and foremost, I was able to hear proper deep extension on both end of the frequency. Upper frequency and lower frequency very well extended to a point that I would say that is the kind of performance which I expect, again, from much more expensive digital audio player. Now let's just quickly compare it with some of the digital audio player that I do have in hand right now. For example, comparison with this FIO M23 here. Okay, the two of them. I dare say that, you know, after spending quite a lot of time comparing between those two, unless it is the limitation of my hearing, then I would say that they are pretty much on par when it comes to technicalities, sound quality, and the general presentation of the sound itself. Except perhaps because of the tuning for this M23 being AKM based, it does offer a bit more of organic sound to the timbre itself. This is a bit more like still a hint of ESS Sabre sort of tuning, meaning that it focuses a bit more on being analytical, but not as musical sounding as this M23. And both of them pretty much runs hot as well. And if I were to compare it with, let's say, Sine N3 Ultra here, okay, this is outright warmer sounding if I were to compare with this R4, because running tube, running AKM, so you can expect this N3 Ultra to be a lot more musical, velvety, smoother than this R4, because this R4 focus, again, the keyword here being analytical and musical at the same time, and this is more on being musical. And last but not least, against IBASO DX180 here, which happened to be my favorite.
just to remind you, okay, this DX180 costs double the price of this R4. This DX180 costs you $529 US, and yet you will not get parametric equalizer or some of the feature that you will find in this R4 here. But when it comes to the sound itself, I will just honestly say that I still prefer the sound of the X180 because it does sound a bit more analog, a bit more open, a bit more airy overall. But then again, when we talk about purely on the technical aspect of the quality of the sound itself, both of them are pretty much matched one-to-one.
Let's just put aside the cons which I have mentioned earlier pertaining to heat and also battery drain, which is in fact the kind of cons I do not consider as being a deal breaker, because this HIBY R4 offers so much positive, especially if you consider the highly affordable price at just $249 US. You're gonna get on top of it, let me just remind you again, Class A amplifier, and also not forgetting the quad configuration of digital audio processor, which means that you can expect the kind of performance and quality equivalent to digital audio player which demand double the price of this HIBY R4. So let that sink in. The way I look at it, simply put, this HIBY R4 is a market disruptor. It sets a new standard for mid-range digital audio player.